For nearly 30 years, the world believed that Sister Lucia and her 4 companions had vanished forever on a stormy October night in 1981. Some said we drowned in the flood that struck the old hills of Umbria. Others whispered that we ran away with men, abandoning our vows. But the truth is darker than any rumor that ever passed through the church gates. My name is Lucia Romano. I am 71 years old, and today, for the first time, I am ready to tell what truly happened behind the sacred walls of Santa Rosa Convent. This is not a story of lost faith. It is a story of evil hiding beneath holy robes, of power, silence, and 5 women who had to choose between their souls and their sanity. Since I was a child, I saw the world differently. My mother used to say I looked beyond what was visible. Maybe that's why I was the first to notice the shadows in the convent, shadows that others refused to see. I joined Santa Rosa when I was 16, filled with pure devotion. The convent sat on a quiet hill above the olive fields, its bell tower rising like a finger toward heaven. Life there was strict, but peaceful. Every morning we woke before sunrise, our voices joining in prayer, the scent of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen. For a long time I believed I had found heaven on earth. There were only 5 of us. Sister Lucia. Myself, the quiet observer. Sister Bianca, young and full of laughter, in charge of the children's lessons. Sister Elena, our scholar who always said, "To read is to pray twice." Sister Rosa, gentle and shy, who worked in the garden with me. And Mother Caterina, our superior, a stern but loving woman who believed that discipline without compassion is cruelty. Our peace began to unravel the day Father Matteo arrived from Rome. He was young, charming, with a voice that filled the chapel like thunder. The villagers adored him. The bishop called him a gift from heaven. But I remember the first moment I saw him. I felt my stomach tighten with a strange unease I couldn't explain. At first, his kindness seemed genuine. Gifts for the chapel, laughter at the dining table, long confessions that left us feeling exposed. Slowly the unease grew into fear. His eyes lingered too long. His words during confession went beyond what was holy. He asked about our bodies, our doubts, our hidden thoughts. One evening, as I walked to the library, I saw something that made my knees tremble. Father Matteo standing too close to Sister Rosa, his hand gripping her wrist while she stared at the floor, frozen in silence. When he noticed me, he smiled and blessed me, as if nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. The silence in the convent felt heavier than stone. I tried to speak to Mother Caterina, but she dismissed my concerns with a warning. "Be careful what you suggest, Lucia. The devil often disguises himself as doubt." Still, I knew what I had seen. The look on Rosa's face haunted me through every prayer, every mass, every breath. Something wicked had entered our sacred home, and no one dared to name it. And so I began to watch. Every movement, every whisper, every moment when Father Matteo's shadow stretched across our walls. I didn't know then that my curiosity would lead to our downfall, that the truth I sought would one day force 5 women to climb those walls and disappear into the storm. The night we decided to leave Santa Rosa, thunder roared like judgment itself, and none of us knew if we were running from hell or straight into it. After that night in the library, something changed inside me. The prayers no longer felt pure. Every time Father Matteo entered the chapel, the air thickened, as if the very stones knew his secret. Mother Caterina had fallen ill with a fever that confined her to bed, leaving the convent without its shield. In her absence, Father Matteo's visits grew frequent. He claimed to be offering spiritual support to us sisters, but in truth his guidance had turned into control. He began summoning us one by one for private confession. Rosa often returned pale, trembling, her eyes red as if she'd been weeping. Bianca, once the heart of our laughter, became quiet. And Elena, dear sharp-minded Elena, started keeping notes in her old prayer journal, as if she already sensed we might need evidence someday. I remember one afternoon vividly. The sun filtered through the stained glass windows, painting colors across the floor. Father Matteo entered the chapel while I was cleaning the altar. He walked slowly, his hand brushing the sacred cloth, his smile soft and rehearsed. "You've grown distant, Sister Lucia," he said in a low tone. "I've been busy, Father," I replied, clutching the silver crucifix I was polishing. "Too busy for confession?" he pressed, stepping closer. "I confess to God, not to men," I said before realizing how dangerous those words were. His expression hardened. For a moment I thought he might strike me, but then he smiled again, the same cold smile he used when blessing the congregation. "Be careful, Lucia," he whispered. "Rebellion is the first seed of sin." That night Sister Rosa came to my room. She was shaking, her habit torn at the shoulder. Through broken sobs, she confessed what I already feared. Father Matteo had cornered her in the confessional, whispering vile things, claiming obedience was the path to salvation. When she resisted, he struck her and swore that no one would ever believe her word against his. I held her all night as she wept. By dawn, I made a decision. I would no longer stay silent. I went to Sister Helena and told her everything. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she closed her prayer book and whispered, "We need proof. Only the truth written down will ever be believed." So we began to gather evidence, quietly, carefully. Notes of dates, small details, moments of cruelty. We were terrified, but the need for justice burned stronger than our fear. Yet Father Matteo was clever. He sensed the shift in us. One evening during supper, he looked directly at me and said, "There are lies spreading among you. I smell rebellion in this holy house." The others froze. My heart pounded so loudly I feared he could hear it. That night, I prayed for courage. I asked God to show me a sign that he still walked among us, that he had not abandoned his daughters to this darkness. At that very moment, thunder rolled through the sky, and I heard Rosa's faint voice from the corridor whispering, "Lucia, he's here." I rushed out and found Father Matteo standing over her once again, his hand raised, his eyes filled with something unholy. When he saw me, he stepped back, his voice calm. "You see, Sister Lucia, even angels can fall." From that moment, I knew our walls no longer kept evil out. They trapped it inside. And if we didn't escape soon, none of us would survive the monster wearing the face of a priest. Rehook. The next day, I went to the bishop myself, believing justice still lived within the church. But what I discovered shattered the last piece of faith I had left. The morning after that storm, I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and walked to the rectory, my heart thundering louder than the church bells. I had made my decision. I would speak to the bishop himself. Inside the old stone building, the air smelled of incense and dust. The secretary eyed me with mild suspicion before sending me into a small office lined with golden icons and faded velvet drapes. The bishop, a tall man with a weary face, greeted me with a forced smile. "What troubles you, my child?" he asked in a tone that was meant to sound kind, but was instead practiced, rehearsed. I told him everything. The confessions that turned into torment, the threats, the bruises on Sister Rosa's arms. I showed him the notes Elena and I had collected, pages filled with dates, places, and cruel words that no priest should ever speak. He listened in silence, hands clasped together, his eyes avoiding mine. When I finished, he sighed and said softly, "These are serious accusations, Sister Lucia. Father Matteo is a respected man. Are you certain your imagination has not been led astray by emotion?" My throat tightened. "I am certain, Your Grace. If you will not protect us, then who will?" The bishop rose from his chair and paced to the window. "I will look into it," he said finally. "But you must not speak of this to anyone. A scandal could destroy the church's image, and your souls." I left with trembling hands, torn between fear and hope. For a moment I believed I had done the right thing. But 2 nights later, Father Matteo arrived at the convent unannounced. His face was twisted in anger. Mother Caterina, frail and still ill, sat in her chair as he read aloud a letter from the bishop. "Sister Lucia Romano is to be transferred immediately," he declared, "for reasons of insubordination and spreading falsehoods about a man of God." I felt the world tilt beneath me. He knew. The bishop had told him everything. Later that evening, Elena came to my room, her face pale. "They won't protect us," she whispered. "We are on our own." Bianca nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Rosa clung to her rosary so tightly her knuckles turned white. It was Sister Marta, the oldest among us, who broke the silence. "For 60 years, she said, "I have served this church faithfully, but obedience to evil is not holiness. If God gives us legs, it's to walk away from hell." That was the moment our decision was sealed. We would leave. The plan was reckless, born from desperation. Elena's keen mind mapped out each step. We would escape on a night of heavy rain, when no one would dare patrol the courtyard. A local farmer, Signor Bellini, who delivered food to the convent, had once hinted that he distrusted Father Matteo. When I met him in the garden, his eyes met mine knowingly. "If you ever need a way out," he said quietly, "I can help." With his aid, we learned that a section of the back wall had crumbled with age. He promised to leave a rope hidden near the old olive tree and wait with his truck on the road below. For days we prepared in silence. Elena secured our identification papers from the archives. Rosa sewed plain dresses to replace our habits. Bianca gathered a small supply of food. Marta hid what little money she had saved over the years. Each prayer, each glance, carried unspoken fear. We all knew the risk. If caught, we would be branded as heretics, perhaps even imprisoned. But staying meant something far worse. The night before our escape, I sat by the window and watched lightning slice through the sky. The bells of Santa Rosa echoed through the valley, and I whispered the same prayer over and over. "Lord, forgive us, not for leaving, but for staying too long." When the final bell struck midnight, it was time. As thunder shook the heavens, 5 women in soaked habits climbed the convent wall, unaware that their flight into freedom would turn into 28 years of silence. The sky that night looked as if it had been ripped open. Lightning slashed across the heavens, and the wind howled through the olive trees. It was the perfect storm, the kind that drowns sound and swallows secrets. We gathered in the cellar of the convent, trembling beneath the dim light of a single candle. Our habits were folded neatly on the table. We stood there in simple dresses, no longer sisters of Santa Rosa, but 5 terrified women preparing to vanish. Sister Marta crossed herself. "Once we step through that door," she whispered, "there's no turning back." Elena nodded. "If we stay, he'll destroy us. If we go, at least we have a chance. I looked around at them. My family, my sisters in everything but blood. Bianca's eyes were wet but resolute. Rosa clutched the small statue of the Virgin she refused to leave behind. Helena held the rope Signor Bellini had promised, and Marta carried a small satchel with bread and medicine. Outside, thunder roared like a warning. We waited for the midnight bells, 12 slow chimes that would hide our footsteps. When the final bell echoed, Helena opened the door, and a gust of rain-soaked wind extinguished our candle. We ran. The courtyard was a blur of shadows and water. Mud splashed beneath our bare feet as we crossed toward the back wall. The storm drowned out every sound except the pounding of our hearts. Rosa nearly slipped, and I grabbed her arm, pulling her upright. "There!" whispered Bianca, pointing to the old olive tree. The wall behind it was cracked, as Signor Bellini had said. The rope was already tied, its end swaying wildly in the wind. Elena went first, climbing with surprising strength for her slender frame. I followed, the wet rope burning my palms. Halfway up, lightning flashed, illuminating the convent below us. Our home, our prison, our tomb. Marta struggled the most. Her hand slipped once, and for a moment my heart stopped. But then I saw the determination in her eyes, faith replacing fear. With a grunt, she reached the top, and we helped pull her over. We jumped down into the mud on the other side, our knees sinking deep. The rain stung like needles. A few meters away, the faint glow of headlights flickered between the trees. Signor Bellini's truck. He waved us over, his coat drenched. "Quickly, before someone sees!" We piled into the back, where he'd laid down blankets and sacks of grain to hide us. The engine sputtered, then growled to life. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. The convent's bell tower loomed in the distance, a black silhouette against the lightning sky. I whispered a final prayer, not for forgiveness, but for strength. Hours later, we stopped in a small barn on Bellini's cousin's property. It smelled of hay and wet earth. He gave us food, dry clothes, and his solemn promise, "You can stay here a few days. No one will look for you here." We sat together in silence, too exhausted to speak. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only the weight of what we'd done. Bianca began to sob quietly. "We'll be called traitors. The church will say we're mad." Helena squeezed her hand. "Let them. At least we are free." That night, as the rain softened into drizzle, I lay awake listening to the sound of the wind through the cracks of the barn. For the first time in years, I felt no footsteps in the hall, no hand on my shoulder, no voice whispering threats in the dark. Still, peace did not come easily. My heart was heavy, with guilt, with fear, with the knowledge that we could never go back. The vows that once bound us to God had become chains we had to break to survive. I turned to Rosa, who was staring at the ceiling. "Do you think he'll forgive us?" I asked. Her answer was soft, almost lost in the rain. "I think he's the one who opened the gate. We thought freedom would bring peace, but the world outside those convent walls had its own kind of judgment and its own demons waiting in silence. For days we hid in that small barn on the outskirts of Assisi. The farmer's cousin, an elderly widow named Teresa Bellini, brought us bread and milk each morning without a word. Her kindness was a miracle in itself, but we knew we couldn't stay there forever. The church's power stretched across every town in Italy. Our names were surely being whispered from pulpit to pulpit. Elena used what little money we had to buy train tickets under false names. By the end of the week, we had become a new family. 5 women who had lost everything but each other. I was now Lucia Rossi, a seamstress. Rosa became Maria, my younger sister. Elena, our cousin, took the name Anna Conti, a teacher. Bianca became Sophia, cheerful as ever, though her laughter now carried an ache. And Marta, our beloved elder, became Nonna Lena, our aunt, the matriarch who had raised us after our parents' death. We left Umbria at dawn. As the train pulled away, I watched the countryside blur into mist. The bells of Santa Rosa faded in the distance, swallowed by the sound of wheels on iron. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt hollow, like I had buried a part of my soul behind those walls. Our new life began in a small town near Florence. We found work in a textile factory. Long hours, low pay, but honest labor. The rhythm of the sewing machines became our prayers. The hum of the needles was our penance. Each night we gathered in our tiny apartment to whisper a quiet rosary. Not for salvation, but for strength. Years passed. We learned to laugh again, to live quietly, but fear never truly left us. Every time a priest walked past the factory, I felt my chest tighten. Every confession I overheard at a distant church made my hands tremble. We were alive, but not free. In 1985, Marta, the oldest, collapsed while baking bread. We buried her under her new name. No habit, no hymns, just a plain wooden cross that read, Lena Rossi, beloved aunt. It was the first funeral we ever attended where we could not pray aloud for who she truly was. After her passing, Elena led us to Florence, where she became a librarian. Her sharp mind and gentle authority gave us all direction. But even her strength faded in time. By the 1990s, cancer took her too, leaving me and Rosa to carry the memory of all five. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Rosa whispered, "Do you think they still tell lies about us?" "I'm sure they do," I said. "But one day someone will hear the truth." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that someone is you." Her words haunted me. For years I kept the notebooks Elena had written, pages of dates, letters, and proof the church had ignored. I was afraid to show them, afraid to reopen wounds. But silence is its own kind of sin. In 2010, I returned to the ruins of Santa Rosa Convent. It had been turned into a cultural center. Children played where we once prayed. Inside, I found Father Giovanni, the new priest, young, humble, nothing like Matteo. I told him everything. I gave him Elena's notebooks, trembling as I spoke. He listened, truly listened, and when I finished, he said quietly, "Sister Lucia, the church failed you, but God never did." For the first time in 30 years, I cried without fear. Now, as I record this story, I know it is not only mine. It belongs to every woman who was told to be silent, every soul who thought holiness meant obedience to cruelty. If my words can free even one person from their chains, then our suffering was not in vain. The Santa Rosa Center now stands where the convent once was, a place for women seeking refuge. Sometimes I sit in the garden beneath the olive tree, the same one we climbed all those years ago, and feel the presence of my sisters. Their laughter, their prayers, their courage. I am no longer hiding. I am still Sister Lucia in my heart, and this time, the world will hear us. If you believe that truth should never be buried in silence, leave a comment saying, "I believe." Like this video, share it, and subscribe, because there are still voices out there waiting to be heard. Every story you listen to is a prayer for justice.